So we've got our website up and running in production, and we've got our website owner who uses Google Analytics as his weapon of choice for understanding the traffic that comes into the website. But we've also got a marketing agency that we've hired, and they don't use Google Analytics. They use some other analytics system for their marketing. So how do we plug two different analytics providers into our website? We obviously don't want to go and duplicate all the code and fire all our analytics information in two different places. So this is where something like Google Tag Manager can come in and provide us with a layer of abstraction between the providers that we want to use for analytics services and our website. So essentially our website fires events into Google Tag Manager, and Google Tag Manager then fires events out to whichever providers we want to use for servicing those tags. So let's go take a look at how we can wire all this up. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whenever it is that I find you, and welcome along. So let's first off go and see if we can set ourselves up on Google Tag Manager. So I'm just in Chrome, logged in with my Google account, and I have nothing in Google Tag Manager under this Gmail account at the moment. So I'm going to go and create a Google Tag Manager account. So my company is something like that. I am in the United Kingdom. Let's do, it's a web platform that we want to use for this. Oh dear. Right, okay, let's just accept all of that. And now that's telling me how to go and install all of that. Yeah, okay, whatever. And that is it. We've now got this is the important bit of information that we need, is this Google Tag Manager ID up here, which is what we're going to need inside of our Nuxt application to be able to plug this in. So with that, let's switch over to Nuxt and do the Nuxt side of things. Okay, so here we are in Visual Studio Code. So the first thing that we need to go and do is install the module that we want to use to be able to integrate with Google Tag Manager. So let's go and install the plugin. So we need npm install, and the plugin is Nuxt.js Google Tag Manager. So let's go and pull that down, and just while that's doing that, let's go over to our environment settings, and we need to add in a Google Tag Manager key. Just while we're there, let's go there, let's copy that key, come back over here, and we need that key in both our staging environments and our production environments, but not our development environment, because we're only going to be debugging it in our development environment. We don't actually want to be sending anything to Google Tag Manager in our staging, in our development environment rather. So a couple of other settings that will become apparent as we go through. So we have a setting to say whether the Google Tag Manager is enabled. And as you can see, for development, we're going to set that to false. And we also have a setting for whether we see debug coming out of the Google Tag Manager plugin. So for development, we set that to true, because we do want to see that trace coming out so that we can see what's going on. But we will set in our staging, we will enable Google Tag Manager, and we'll also keep the trace on in our staging environment. But for production, we will do exactly the opposite. We will enable Google Tag Manager, but turn off the trace, because we don't want that in our production environment. Okay, so that's our environment settings done. So now let's go to our Nuxt config.js and plug some of this in. So right at the top of the file where we get our existing environment variables, so we can add a property for Google Tag Manager Key, and we can get that from our Google Tag Manager Key setting over here. Then we need to come down a little bit. I need to add into the modules section the actual plugin. So that adds that into the Nuxt pipeline. And then somewhere down here, let's do it after the Axios stuff, I need to create the actual configuration area for the Google Tag Manager. And in here, we need to set the ID property. We can set that with that. There's a property called page tracking, which we obviously want to set to true, because that's the whole purpose of this, is we want to track the pages and understand the way that our users are using our site. There is an auto init property, which we want to set to true, so that it auto initializes itself, and enable. And then the last one is the debug setting. So whether or not we see that debug trace coming out, and we can set that to Google Tag Manager debug. In fact, we can do this same approach up here. For this. So we can get the Google Tag Manager key that way as well. So that populates all the properties that we need for this. So the only reason that we're putting the Google Tag Manager key into the public runtime is in case we need to reinitialize anything, or we need to get hold of this Tag Manager key somewhere else in our application. We've then stored that away nicely so that we can reuse that somewhere else. So let's run this up. And we're running in dev, so let's remember that in dev we are not actually going to be calling Google Tag Manager. So we're not going to make actual HTTP calls out. We're going to disable that, but we are going to see it in the debug console. So we should see something in our trace that things are actually being called for Google Tag Manager is what we're looking for. So straight away we can see in our console a GTM, the Google Tag Manager is using a mocked API. Real Google Tag Manager events will not be reported, which is an excellent start. So we can see in the debug trace, as I navigate around, that we get a page view event, and it's telling us the page that's been navigated to, so my team, main page. So that is showing that Google Tag Manager is working, although it's not actually calling Google Tag Manager. So let's go ahead and actually see if we switch that on, that we get proper events coming out. So how do we do that? Let's go and have a look. Let's run up staging and let's come over to Google Tag Manager. If we go to preview in Google Tag Manager, then we can type in our address and our page that we want to go to by default. Let that connect, and then that will open our main page, and it says Google Tag Manager is connected. And if I put that over this side, then we should see events coming in over here. So as I navigate around, we get a Nuxt route event in Google Tag Assistant. If I go to the Contact Us route, and I can look and drill into each of these and drop that down so I can see that it's a page view event, and we've navigated to, or the user has navigated to, the Contact Us page here. In this one, I navigated to the My Team page, and if I go back home, I get another Nuxt route. So our page tracking is working basically. We're seeing page view events, and we get the page title. So that's good. So the page tracking is getting as far as Google Tag Manager. So how do we push that on to Google Analytics is the next part of the problem. Let's come over here and go to Google Analytics now. And let's sign up. Sign up for this. We are very small. And how do you intend to use measure customer engagement? That will do. And yes, I accept. And save that. And now I should have a Google Analytics property. So let's go and set up a web data stream. And we need the actual production website address of our site. Some name that we can give it. We can turn that off. And let's create a stream for that. And that gives us this measurement ID here. So with that in place, we can copy this, come back over to Google Tag Manager and create a new tag. So we can call this something meaningful. And in here we can go and pick a GA4, which is the later version of Google Analytics. We can copy that in and send a page view event when this configuration loads. Yes, I think we can do that. So we can save that. And we can configure a new trigger as well. Let's add a new trigger of Nuxt page view. We want a custom event for this, and the event name is going to be Nuxt route, and it triggers on all custom events. You can save out of that, save out of that. You can submit that as a new version. Google Analytics. We can publish that out, and that is our latest version of our Tag Manager config with Google Analytics deployed into it. So now we can come over to here, which has got our staging site running. Let's load that up and go to our main page and navigate around a little bit. And if we come over to Google Analytics on the Reports tab in the real-time option, we can see that we've got a user, which is us, and we can see that we've got some page view events going in. So there is data feeding now into Google Analytics around our page views, which is what we want. So that's good. We can see how many page views we've had on each particular page. So that's that all working. But what if we want to actually have bespoke events? So what about when our form gets submitted over here. Can we track that kind of thing through Google Tag Manager and into Google Analytics? And the answer is yes, we can. So let's go and have a look at how we can plug some of that in. So let's just bring up our contact page, and right where we reset our form down here, we can go and make a call. Now that we've got the Google Tag Manager plugin, there is a $GTM that's available to us, and we can just call push on that, and we can choose what we want to push in. So we give the event a name of something like form submitted, and some other variables that we can pass in alongside that event that are entirely arbitrary. But if we had multiple forms on our site, then this will tell us that it's the contact form that's actually being submitted. And not only can we do it for a successful request to our form, we can also put this into the error handling as well. So let's create a new method in here called send error to Google Tag Manager that basically sends a push with some error data if error data is passed in. And with that in place inside the first error block, so if we have an error data object, we can pass that, and in these other blocks we can just pass the error message. So let's get rid of that. So now we're sending our error messages across to Google Analytics so that we can understand what's going wrong with those and see that people are having problems. So back over into Google Tag Manager, we need to add a new tag in here, and it's going to be a GA4 event, and we can specify our Google Analytics configuration that we configured earlier. The event name we're going to pull from the data that's passed across, and we are going to have a couple of event parameters. So we're going to have form name, and its value is going to be form name. And this is coming from what we're passing into the event. So if you remember over here, we're passing in a property called form name. So that's where that is coming from. And the triggering we need to set for this is going to be a custom event. So it's a new trigger, custom event, and the event name is form submit. We can save, we can give it a name and save that. Save that. And we'll do the same for the form submit failure as well. Create a new trigger. The event name. Okay, so we've got 3 tags now that we're expecting. So we have to go and add a variable in. So let's go and add the form name variable. That is going to be a data layer variable of name, and we can just save that. And we also need one for form error message as well. It's also going to be a data layer variable. So now let's submit that and publish that. Okay, that's published that out. Now we've got staging running. Preview that again and go in on localhost so that it suits our API instead of on the IP address. So that's connected in. That's connected up. Let's go over here, fire that in, and we get our success. And we can look at our variables. We can see what was actually submitted on the actual data layer from the Google Tag Manager code. But you can see that we do have this form error message. So let's just stop the function again. Try that again and send that in so that we get an error, and then restart our function. So we should now have a form submit failure that's got a form error message in it. And once this restarts, we can send in that same request again and we get a success. Let's go and have a look in Google Tag Manager, and you can see even for a form submitted now, because it's become after a form submitted failure, we have a form error message, which isn't great. That's not really what we want to be seeing passed across to Google Analytics, because that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever for us to have a form error message. So how can we go and fix that so that we only get the data in the event that we actually want? So let's go and come over here, and the way that we can get around this is to create a plugin in Nuxt. So let's come over to the plugins. Let's create a new plugin called GTM extensions, and we'll use our same client convention that we've used before so that we know it's a client plugin basically. So with our new file, we need some boilerplate code. So this is where our code sits, and inside here we can have a const my Google Tag Manager equals, we can get hold of the global Google Tag Manager plugin, and then once we've got hold of that, we can create a new method on that, and this method is going to reset the actual Google Tag Manager data layer. So some Google Tag Manager terminology, that it calls it the data layer. It's the way that it sends all the data from your website basically across to Google Tag Manager. So we need to first go and check if we've got Google Tag Manager configured from our Nuxt config properties. So if we've got a key, and we can also find the global Google Tag Manager, this is where Google stores the actual tag manager itself right against the window object. So if both of those conditions are met, so we can find Google Tag Manager, then we can get hold of the actual real Google Tag Manager instance using the key. So Google Tag Manager config dot Google Tag Manager key, and then once we've got hold of that, we can actually call a data layer function which resets all the variables back to their defaults. So that's all the reset data layer does, is we're actually calling a full-on reset to reset the data layer. So it's well named. Then what we actually want to do is override the default push method. So let's save the current push method in a variable and create a new version of the push method on our new object. Oops. In there. So we create a brand new push function, And all that is going to do is call our reset data layer and then call the original push method, passing in the data that was passed in. So nothing too sinister. And then finally we need to replace, for all of this to work, we need to replace the default GTM that's in the context with our new fandangled enhanced version of it. That should have some parentheses, and that should be that. We're good to go. With that, we need to go and actually add that plugin into the Nuxt config. So let's go and do that. Where's the plugin section? There it is. So let's go and plug that in and save that. So let's run up the staging again. And that's running. So let's come over here and preview that again. And we'll connect on localhost. And that's all connected. That's good. And let's send in. We know will fail because we're not running our API. So that has successfully failed, if that makes sense. So let's just go and run up the API this time so that we get a success. Okay, the API is running, so let's send that in again and we get a success. So let's go and see what's in our Google tag data. So if we go and actually look at the data layer itself, we can see for the failure, what's coming across is the form name and the error message and the error data as we would want, so that we can actually get some more information about what's actually going on. And for our form submitted, if we look at the same thing, you can see now that we're getting a nice clean set of data that's coming across, so that the form error message is not now coming across, which is exactly what we want. So we are now cleaning down our data layer between events so that we get a nice clean set of data, so we don't get any extraneous data. And that's it. We have now wired up our website so that our marketing team or our website owner, whoever, can understand from Google Analytics the actual traffic that's coming in. And as you can see, we are getting some nice traffic stats coming in now, so we can see what our most popular page is, which obviously, because we've been debugging that, that's our contact us page at the moment. So all of this is really useful information for a website owner to be able to understand how their website is being used and from where. So whether it's mobile or a website, and which countries are coming in, so they can really understand the demographic that they're appealing to with their website. And with that, I will leave you, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.